everyone. This is Maheen, and welcome to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. Today, we are analyzing the architectural modernization of wealth management workflows, the minimization of post-meeting data administrative friction, and the rigorous data residency compliance structures required in highly regulated ecosystems. Because in 2026, protecting independent wealth management advisory practices from escalating overhead and massive intergenerational wealth transfers requires moving past generic public models to implement purpose-built, secure AI layers that seamlessly update downstream core infrastructure. Joining us is John Connell, the co-founder and CEO of Focal AI, Canada's #1 secure AI assistant for financial planners. John established an elite professional pedigree at Microsoft, where he managed a 1 billion P&L within Office 365 and contributed strategically to the historic acquisition of LinkedIn. After directing go-to-market scaling for high-growth tech startups in San Francisco and New York, he operated as a foundational business hire at a prominent compliance tech firm, scaling it systematically to 36 million funding. And he's a graduate at the University of Texas at Austin. In his early career, foundation spans wealth management at Merrill Lynch and institutional equity trading at Jefferies. So without a further ado, let's dive in and welcome John. John, it's a privilege having you on the podcast today. Thank you for joining. How are you?
Thank you for having me. Excited for the conversation here, Maheen.
Very, very pleased to have you with us. Now, John, let's open our discussion by understanding how do we really bridge the structural administrative gap in wealth management. If you ask any independent Canadian financial planner what happens the moment a discovery meeting wraps up, they will describe an exhausting hours-long backlog of manual record keeping. Tell us, what operational gaps in Canadian wealth management do generic AI models fail to address for advisors?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it actually starts with how it is that generative AI came about a few years ago now. My co-founder and I saw this capacity for human productivity, and it was actually in conversation with a few friends, family in the wealth management space that we saw it quite clearly. Advisors were drowning in operational work. And that effectively mapped pretty directly to what generative AI was capable of at the time. So my co-founder, Jerry, he's a Waterloo grad, also came up through Microsoft. And as we were looking into the space, we had seen that advisors were spending roughly 17% of their time actually speaking with clients. And the rest of that time was non-revenue generating work, right? It was meeting prep, notes, follow-ups, re-entering the exact same type of information across a CRM, a planning tool, PDF documents, and no one had really built an assistant that understood that world natively. So we went ahead and did it, and Focal AI is the AI meeting assistant purpose-built for Canadian advisors. It really goes beyond just the note-taking functionality into performance coaching, as well as data entry automation for the exact tools that advisors already use today.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, John, for kind of walking us through that. And that is a key insight. Generic AI tools, they often fail to address the unique workflows and compliance requirements for financial advisors. Now let's explore how purpose-built AI can help advisors save time, improve efficiency, and serve more clients without increasing headcount. Tell us, how can a native AI assistant save advisors time and expand client capacity without extra headcount?
Yeah, that's a great question. So an advisor used to lose, 30 to 45 minutes prepping for a meeting, another hour on post-meeting admin. You multiply that across 10 meetings a week, and now you've reclaimed roughly a full extra day of work. So AI doesn't just save you time, right? It really gives you back the optionality to spend that time at will. So with Focal AI, we're both a product platform that immediately unlocks up to roughly 15 hours a week for an advisor, and then helps them elevate performance. We also go several steps beyond that as an agentic services provider. So we can also help firms unlock value through self-managed workflows. So with Focal AI, right, we're seeing advisors serve up to roughly 30% more clients. They're seeing a lift in AUM, or assets under management. And this is all without hiring a single new person to the team. This is just with the time that's reclaimed. And then, of course, the question is really, what do you do with that time is really where you can choose to spend it.
Mhm. Well, that's a powerful benefit. Automation really allows advisors to spend less time on administration and really more time delivering value to clients. Now let's discuss the security and compliance standards that are required to safely deploy AI within Canada's financial sector. Tell us, what data residency and compliance standards must an AI platform meet in Canada?
Yeah, in Canada, there are really three or four things that a chief compliance officer should be keying into. One is around Canadian data residency. Client data should stay in Canada. So we, for example, run on a Toronto-based Microsoft Azure infrastructure. Two is not storing the audio or the video, having stateless AI architecture that never trains on client data. Three is around PIPEDA aligned consent. And this is the one that a lot of organizations and even companies in the note-taking space get wrong. Focal is using visible meeting bots that support implied consent under PIPEDA, whereas botless providers might quietly start transcribing before disclosure, which can create real regulatory and legal exposure. We're talking potential fines up to 100K CAD. The fourth check that is absolutely core, your SOC 2 Type 2, right? Having that certification for your enterprise-grade security controls. So if you're looking for a quick disqualification list, if you're a CCO, right, ask about a data center. Is it in Canada? Do you store audio? Do you store video? Does your AI provider capture meetings before the client has consented? And what we're seeing is that well-designed AI, it actually reduces compliance risk because it standardizes documentation and removes the human inconsistency factor. So really the real risk here isn't necessarily AI, it's actually the question around whether or not your AI is effectively being managed. If we wanted to take this whole conversation around compliance a step further, one of the things that we're actually seeing with generic AI, when you look at models that are off the shelf, right? Phenomenal general engines, but they're not necessarily advisor operating systems. So a few gaps that we've seen for the Canadian ecosystem, first is that a lot of these generic off-the-shelf tools, they will miss the context of conversations between clients and advisors. To the earlier question, on where is it that we're really making inroads in the industry. Second is that generic AI doesn't integrate with your industry-specific tools. It won't autofill 400 fields in Conquest or integrate with Equisoft or with Maximizer, right? And if your AI today isn't updating your CRM and generating your email and prepping your next meeting and giving you that personal feedback, you're still falling behind peers that are using purpose-built tools that are vertically ordained, like Focal AI. The last piece I'll comment on briefly here, and this was the tie-in to the regulation piece that you mentioned. Most generic tools have no compliance posture for Canadian wealth. And what I mean by that, they might have public URLs exposed to the whole internet, or maybe they're not operating compliantly under implied consent, as outlined in PIPEDA and mentioned earlier. So you can't just paste a client's financial life into a consumer chatbot and call it compliant, right?
Right, right. Well, I mean, that's a crucial insight, John, and it's an important point because strong security and local data governance, they are so essential. And the more people understand it, it's a better for them because ultimately it is for maintaining trust and regulatory compliance. So thank you for highlighting that. Now let's examine how advisors can adapt to changing client expectations during the largest wealth transfer in Canadian history. Tell us, how must advisors adapt to remain trusted with digitally native younger investors?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the future of wealth management is still built on human level trust. What moves money, right? What keeps clients really is that empathetic level of advice that's holistic in how it's actually delivered. So, someone who helps a client navigate the emotional complexity of real financial decisions, not just the numbers, is what they're looking for. And that's exactly where our platform comes in, especially with the performance coaching features. We're taking a bottom up, approach on how do we really elevate the performance, the outcomes of these advisors. And we're seeing in some cases, advisors are able to better prospect, better convert AUM, deepen their client relationships through science-backed behavioral analysis and that proactive feedback loop that we're giving them after all their client calls to become the best that they can become. It's sort of like having the best advisor in the industry sitting in on your calls and giving you personalized feedback afterwards so that you can start performing like the best. One of
Mhm.
the big analogies I use is that AI, it's not here as the Terminator, right? As some of the headlines would suggest. It's really the Iron Man suit. It doesn't replace the advisor. It makes them more operationally effective and just genuinely better at what they do.
That's a valuable perspective, John. And you're right. Technology, it works best when it strengthens client relationships rather than replacing them. Now let's look at the lessons fintech founders can learn when building solutions in highly regulated industries. Tell us, what is the key go-to-market lesson for tech founders that are scaling in Canada's regulated financial ecosystem?
Yeah, one of the areas we've seen as a fall on your face, whoops, don't treat Canada as an export market for a US product, right? The lesson here is local first, proof first. With Focal AI, we've led really with what matters. The Toronto data residency, pivot aligned compliance, supporting our French speaking customers, and an AI overlay or an integration system that keys into key tools within the industry, whether that's AI overlays for Conquest or I'd mentioned earlier, Equisoft and Maximizer integrations. And that's rather than asking firms to rip and replace their tech stack, right? When it comes to regulated finance in particular, rip and replace equates to a multi-year procurement nightmare. No one wants to deal with it. But with AI, what we're able to do is overlay existing tools and then see those gains very, very quickly. That's a big yes for the parties that we partner with. So today we have advisors across networks, including Manulife, IPC, Financial Horizons, and more using Focal AI today. And in a regulated, relationship-driven industry, credibility travels through peers. We've been really lucky to be able to rely on that.
Mhm. Well, that is an excellent takeaway, John. I mean, solving a specific industry challenge often creates the strongest foundation for long-term growth. But this has been a great conversation with you. Thank you so much for sharing such great insights on strategic playbooks for founders in highly regulated sectors, as well as how do we really regain or retain trust amid the greatest intergenerational wealth transfer. So all these insights were super helpful. As you wrap up, what is the best way for financial professionals to really bridge the AI execution gap this quarter?
Yeah, I think there's two pieces to my response here. One is what you just mentioned around the really massive wealth transfer that's happening, right? You've got roughly $1 trillion in assets that are exchanging hands over the next decade. Half of the advisors in industry are expected to be retiring, and roughly half of the industry, investors are saying, "Hey, I'm open to exploring new advisors." So one of the big questions I'm asking if I'm an advisor today is, how do I outcompete? How do I gain more client capacity? How is it that I bring more business to my book? And just recognizing that there are tools out there. I think the big push that I would drive for here is stop experimenting, hit the go button, do that compliantly, right? So this quarter, pick one super high friction workflow. Maybe it's note taking, maybe it's post meeting data entry, and then figure out how to automate it. And with Focal AI, advisors get the added bonus of having a personal coach, right? That layers in and tells you not just what was said, but what you could have said better. So what we're seeing is that the firms adopting now are starting to see some of those gains compound. In our vision, AI is, it's not just the future; it's really the filter for who has one. And those advisors that manage to make that push today are going to be the ones that are seeing the most success long term.
No, that is an exceptional reminder that buying technology is only half the battle, and the real victory really belongs to those who deploy it cleanly into active daily workflows. Thank you so much, John, for joining us and for sharing such great expertise and your insights. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And listeners, that was John Connell from Focal AI, a masterclass in migrating away from manual financial planning software entry, leveraging localized data residency to clear enterprise compliance audits, and understanding how to expand client capacity by 30% through targeted administrative automation in 2026. Thank you for tuning into the podcast. Be sure to subscribe and visit CanadianSME.ca for more resources. And to learn more about how we are supporting the ecosystem, please visit Canadian SME Small Business Foundation at smefoundation.ca. And a special shout out to UPS and our ADP for their ongoing commitment to empowering small businesses across Canada. Please keep thriving, and we'll see you in the next one.